Welcome to Rebecca Sounds Reveille. Today on the show, we have a very special guest who is quite knowledgeable and phenomenal in the work that she is doing and the work that she has done. In fact, today's show is going to be a little bit more serious than some of the shows that we have had. We're going to talk about child abuse, and the author that is with me, amongst many other things in her background that she has, is incredible with the life story that she has behind her and the things that she's doing to move forward. She is from Delaware with a number of degrees. She is just incredible. You'll see the passion within her as she shares the things that she thinks that you need to know and things that you can do to overcome the challenges that you might be facing if you don't know where to turn, or that you know someone who is facing the challenges and you can get the information along to them. She is just an incredible woman, and while we have reached retirement, that doesn't stop us, I don't think, not including myself. We keep going, and we keep going on with the things that fill us inside and what we're passionate about. So without any further ado, welcome to the show, Rebecca Pott Fitton. And I also want to share with the audience the name of your book, which is Wave Rider. So welcome.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
I am just ecstatic when I talk to someone who, like yourself, has had a background and is not considered a victim. They are considered a survivor. And there is so much that goes on in so many people's lives. And much of it is not shared or talked about because the topic is taboo. And so some of those things are child abuse, some of those things are sexual abuse. And I would like for you to share with the audience a little bit about your background and where you've come from.
Well, in terms of my mental emotional journey, I was sexually abused at the age of 2. And that affected my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
It affected my emotions. It affected my mental stability. It affected me physically. And it was a long journey to recapture my own power.
Mm-hmm.
But I have written about it, and I am proud of the work I have done.
I am very excited for you, and I am very proud of the work that you have done too. It takes so much courage, 1, to recognize that there is a problem, and 2, to face it. Well, and 3, then to talk about it openly and candidly in public, whether it is through writing or like we are today. And so I am just so impressed by your courage. And I think that your courage and your focus is going to just touch the lives of so many people and make a difference in their life. One of the things that I think is a big challenge for those who are in their younger years, they are not able to identify what is truly abuse because they don't know any different. This is the life that they have been brought into. This is their home. And outside of that home, they really don't know anything about what's going on in others' homes and whether this is normal or abnormal, and whether they're being victimized. And so one of the things with your expertise, maybe you can share with the audience, is what age typically do you think that someone is able to really identify and recognize that what is happening to them can be wrong?
Well, I'm probably not a good one to answer that question because I'm not a professional. But whenever, after a child knows how to speak, and can have a dialogue with his or her parents, anytime after that, I would say a child would be able to communicate something that is not correct.
Do you think our wiring kind of just, I don't know, tells us inside that there is something wrong, that something just isn't right?
Certainly in my case that happened. But you know, as you discussed, you only know your own existence. So you think that everybody else, you know, is like you, and everybody else has the same journey and same anxiety. And that's clearly not true. And so the question becomes when you do something about it. For me, it took a very long time. I didn't start psychotherapy until I was 40.
Oh, my goodness.
So I had 4 decades of extreme pain, and just not feeling right. And then the pain got too much, and I decided to do something about that.
And I am so glad that you did, because really being able to address things inside internally helps us to really move forward and make such a difference, not only in our lives, but the lives of others. And we can have a much more fulfilling life. And so, you know, one of the things I think that is a huge challenge for people is that if they speak out, that their perpetrator is going to get in trouble. And so there's some guilt there. And then not only that, but there's a possibility that that person will come back and then harm them further. And I think that this can be true regardless for what age you're in.
Yes, that's true. But for me, knowledge of who did the sexual abuse didn't come until much later, and he had already passed. I didn't identify him until 2006.
Okay.
So that was, you know, that's pretty recent.
Yes, it is.
And he had already passed, but still there are reverberations in the family.
Now, I can understand that, and I'm sure that there's quite a ripple effect, because there are people who know that don't say anything, people who suspect and don't want to create any waves.
Right.
And so they don't say anything. And then there's people who really don't know, and once it's brought forth, then there's so much anger and fear with that the response can be quite detrimental in many ways, and it can really destroy families and relationships across the board. But for the victim, and I am wondering, in your case, did this create challenges in interpersonal relationships or through work, or were you able to sustain but still just were struggling with something internally?
I was able to lead a very fulfilling professional life. All of my direction was focused on both my education as well as my professions, And so I was able to uh, advance and have a very fulfilling career.
Mm-hmm.
The difficulty was internal. I had armor around me that was so thick. Therapists had a hard time getting through that.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me years of therapy, but it's how I coped.
Mm-hmm.
So I walled off my emotions and essentially separated them from the rest of me.
And that had to be very difficult because there's this internal conflict that's going on and you want to address it, but you can't. And then there's all of the pressure that you have in a workforce environment. And not only that, but things that are going on at home.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
lot to bear.
It felt like a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but you just have to move through. And that's how I addressed my therapy, is that I just had to move through. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And as you know, in therapy, it's spiral. So you learn a little something and then you have a break and then you learn a little something else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an unpeeling of who you actually are.
Mm-hmm.
And it is worth the work and it is worth the journey. Absolutely.
I would agree with you. And I think that there is such a stigma around going to therapy that many people refuse to go simply because of the connotation. And what we're finding is that therapy is really successful and it's really allowing a person to identify not only what is going on internally, but allowing them to have the resources and tools to be able to move through some of the pain that is there. And so let me ask you, after all of this, does the pain go away or are you just able to manage the pain?
Actually, for me, I spent decades managing the pain,
Mm-hmm.
but now it has gone away.
I love it.
And I feel quite wonderful. And it's like I'm finding out who I really am. And it's just terrific.
I love to hear that. That's such a word of encouragement to those who are watching and for those who may also be listening, because there's a couple of things here. Yes, you've experienced pain and trauma, and there is an end in sight that's going to bring a refreshing river your way. It's just that there are some things that you have to do to move through that, and it can be longer for some people, it can be shorter for others. But moving through that will get you into a position where you can do exactly, Rebecca, what you're doing.
Right. Right. When I started therapy, I did not go to a trauma specialist. But then about 5 years into it, I did find a psychologist who specialized in trauma. And that all accelerated my journey. I also had other help from other healers. And it was my therapist who suggested that I have body massage, because we're all connected, our body, mind, and spirit. So your body holds your memories. And so I started with that, and also had acupuncture and some other healing modalities. And because you're holistic, and so that's how I approached my healing.
Well, this is very fascinating because I think that is an aspect that many of us tend to overlook, and that is what's happening with our body. And not only that, I mean, body, mind, and spirit is huge. A lot of times we just think about the psychological impact that certain things affect us with,
Mhm.
but we forget that we have to work on all areas and address each area that needs to be worked on. And
Right.
so it's very interesting that massage and acupuncture was a modality for you. And that is something that, again, I think many people forget to look at. And so I would encourage those of you who are watching and listening to use that as well. But let's talk for a minute. I have one question before we go into your book, which is super important to me. But one of the things that many people have heard, and you may not know, is that the most common abuser is either someone that's within the family or someone that is close to and knows the victim. You're shaking your head
Correct.
yes. So, okay.
Yeah,
That's,
that's the national statistics bear that out.
mhm. You know, and that's very frustrating because our sense of trust is so violated, because
Correct.
the people that we think are supposed to be there through thick and thin and rescue us or comfort us when we are succumbed to different issues, those can be the perpetrators, and this is not good. So let's talk about your book and how you came to a point where you were able to write and get your message out there and what you're hoping to accomplish.
Okay. Actually, I started writing poetry in 2009. And most of my writing actually took place at 3 o'clock in the morning. And
Hmm.
I would wake up and I would have lines of poetry going through my head. And so I just went to the computer and I wrote the poetry. And I did that for about 5 years. And some of it was very powerful and took a lot of my heart.
Hmm.
And as I shared my poetry with friends, they encouraged me to do more. And
Hmm.
so eventually, what the doing more for me was deciding that I would publish a book. And
Hmm.
so then I organized my poetry and inserted my own story, prose story,
Hmm.
within the book. And now it's called Wave Rider.
Hmm. I think that's fantastic. And how did you come about your title?
Actually, the title I took from one of the poems called Wave Rider,
Mm.
and it really summarizes um, it summarizes my journey. And so I thought that really has the sense of what my journey has been about.
Hmm. And it is a journey. And as we know, anytime we travel, the roads sometimes are just straight. And then sometimes we have bumps in the road and we have to make decisions about how we're going to go about navigating them. And so I like that you have chosen to look at this as a journey and that your destiny is not over. You still have so much more to give and so much more to get from life, which is absolutely incredible. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing the people who are victimized, in, whether it's child abuse or sexual abuse?
I think certainly the biggest challenge is to begin your healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you begin to have the determination and the tenacity to stay with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you start, you'll start to feel a little better, but then you just really need to keep working until you find that new place of peace and comfort within. And once you find that, it's quite remarkable.
It is remarkable. And one of the modalities I'm wondering, was that through writing that it helped you?
Yes, it did. It helped with the completion. I did not do journaling. Now, often therapists will suggest journaling for their clients, and that really wasn't something that appealed to me. But writing this poetry, because it's very succinct, was a good modality for me, or a medium for me to express myself.
I love it. And a lot of times, especially with the writing that has become so savvy in our technological world, we are thinking about blogs and there's ebooks and this and that, but we tend to overlook how much passion and how much healing and how much creativity and how much expression is brought on through poetry.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely amazing. Now, as an author, what has been the biggest challenge, not only sharing your story, but marketing your books?
Well, I think that the important thing is to find the right audience.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have determined with some help is that it's really the survivors, the people who know that they have been abused, and the people who have started their work. And so that then we can have a conversation.
Right.
And I see my book and my connection with others as an inspiration for them to just know that somebody has made it. Somebody has gone past all of the armor, all of the difficulties, and now has a very joyous life.
Yes, yes, yes. And they're not alone.
Right.
They're not alone. I think a big challenge in trauma is feeling like there is no one else in the world who can identify with what I'm going through. And so one of the best steps is being able to know that there are other people out there that have experienced something similar or the same, and they have made it through.
Right.
And they're on a very wonderful journey now, not just from healing, but just actually living a life fulfilling. Super exciting. And so do you have any workshops coming up, book signings, or anything that if the audience would like to connect with you, they can reach you?
No personal presentations at this time. If people would like to connect with me, I have my website, which is www.rebeccapottfitton.com. I am also on Twitter and Facebook. So if people want to, connect that way, that would be great.
Fantastic, fantastic. And anything that you'd like to share with the audience to encourage them to talk about such a sensitive subject, and what they can do if they are experiencing this themselves so that they can begin to go on the journey of healing like you have.
Well, someone asked me, because as you mentioned, family and friends get all involved when this is revealed.
Mm-hmm.
And someone asked me if I had, asked permission of my family to publish a book.
Oh.
And I said, I never asked anyone. I don't need anybody's permission. So I think that the first step for individuals is to say, this is my life and this is what I'm going to do, and everybody else can, will just have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully what will happen is that they'll be surprised about the support.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned was that there are other people who have gone through this experience. Actually, national statistics show that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys younger than 18 have been sexually abused. That is horrific.
Yes, it is.
And it's like an epidemic. And the fact that the Center for Disease Control collects statistics on this, I find totally socially outrageous.
Yes. Yes. This is unbelievable to think that we have a system in place that's collecting statistics off of something that is so common.
Right.
And yet most of us don't even realize the severity of it and how common it is. This is really an unacceptable thing, period.
Correct. And that's part of what I want to do in terms of bringing my voice to the conversation, that this is unacceptable and that we need to learn to live a different way.
I agree with you. Have you given any thought or talk about what we can do as a society as a whole to begin to change those numbers?
There are actually many websites and support groups that deal with this subject. When I first started searching, I was just totally amazed by the depth and breadth of the professionals who are involved in sexual abuse and or abuse of any kind.
Yes.
And it's just is quite depressing reality about our society.
It is very much so. And the numbers that you just shared were here in the United States, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you have a degree in international relations, so you know what's going on globally. And human trafficking is a huge issue right now, which falls under this definite umbrella of child abuse, sexual abuse. And there is very much prominent people that are involved, and there's very much people right in our own communities that are involved. So this is unbelievable. I'm wondering internationally, though, if you have seen or throughout your career were able to identify places or individuals that happen to be subjected to this as well.
Well, internationally, the most prominent places for rape and any kind of abuse are war zones.
Interesting. Okay.
So that, rape is clearly a tool of war.
Mm-hmm.
In Africa, Boko Haram kidnapped all of those young girls.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, all of them were abused. And so it's where the war is. And I think that that's very telling, because war is all about power over.
And that's the same thing with a abuser and a victim. So essentially, there's a war within a war.
Right.
This is absolutely unbelievable. It's quite disgusting, and it's very saddening to think about how many men and women, boys and girls, are being subjected to this kind of torture, because
Right.
it's not just physical. You like you were sharing. I mean, you have mind, body, and spirit. And so every part of that person has been violated. And it's a very, very challenging thing to work through, but it
Right.
can be done. And so, as you shared, therapy is one great opportunity to identify that. The modalities for coping with it through massage, through acupuncture, through writing, and it can be poetic writing, or journaling. These are wonderful tools to be able to get someone moving in a direction where they can become healthier.
Right.
I
We all
absolutely,
want to be healthier.
yes, I absolutely love it. I mean, there's always little things that we can do to get healthier, but when we are really kind of broken spiritually, mentally, and physically, we really have to move into areas that do take work, and they do take time. And the longer that a person has either been exposed to or has not addressed it, it might take a little bit longer to work through all
Right.
those layers of self-protection.
Correct.
This is quite fascinating, in a very sad way. It's very disheartening. And in the United States here, the numbers are just, again, they are unacceptable. And I would like to see our audience get in contact with you to help spread the word and see what we can do to combat this war that we are experiencing within our own culture here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's give out your website again.
It's www.Rebecca Pott, Pott, Fitton, Fitton.com.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. And I thank you also for having the courage to work through your challenge and exposing that and overcoming the fear of what others may say, the need for approval, and really getting your word out there. So thank you very much.
It's been my honor and pleasure. Thank you.
For those of you who have been watching and know that this is such a challenge that we're facing, and quite a very difficult topic to talk not only on the web, on television, on radio, it needs to be exposed, it needs to be addressed, and all of us can make a difference. If you yourself are a person that has been victimized, it's very important for you to find the way to start making yourself healthy and overcoming what you're feeling inside, what your body, your mind, and your soul is experiencing. And if you yourself have not been in that position, may suspect someone who is, or certainly know someone who is, we definitely would like to see that we can get the assistance that they need or you yourself need. And you can contact us here at thelibertybeacon.com, or you can definitely go to Rebecca Pott Fitton's website and message her. But most importantly, one of the things that you can do in the meantime is utilize the modalities and methods that we've talked about in the show today, and also get a copy of Wave Writer. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We look forward to having you tune in again soon.